Good morning. So let's start today's discussion on the daily current affairs. So to start with, अरे पेन ड्राइव कहीं ये जो यार माउस टा कहीं बस देने करे. So to start the topic for the day, so the first topic is relating to India-Bangladesh relation because recently the Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is on an official visit to India, and a number of agreements were signed between the two sides, including the bilateral comprehensive economic partnership agreement. So what is the issue? It's the bilateral comprehensive economic partnership agreement. So in light is bilateral comprehensive economic partnership agreement. Comprehensive economic partnership agreement or SEPA. So because trade relations will be further strengthened through this agreement. So to know the background of India-Bangladesh trade, in 21-22, Bangladesh has emerged as the largest trade partner of India in South Asian countries. Among the South Asian countries, okay, so Bangladesh has emerged as India's largest trade partner and the fourth largest destination of Indian export worldwide. Fine. So largest trade partner in South Asia as well as fourth largest destination of Indian export worldwide. Fine. Export to Bangladesh grew more by 66% from 9.69 billion to 16.15 billion in the last financial year. Fine. Then India is Bangladesh's second big trade partner and its largest export market in Asia. Despite COVID-19 related disruptions, bilateral trade grew at an unprecedented rate of almost 44% from 10.78 billion in 2020-21 to 18.13 billion in 21-22. This means in spite of the pandemic impact, the trade has further expanded between the two sides. Fine. So during the pandemic, trade between the countries were very harshly affected globally. This is a global phenomenon that trade has been severely affected. Global trade has been affected, but in this period, even the bilateral trade between India and Bangladesh witnessed a growing trend, which is the most positive aspect in the bilateral relation. Fine. That means bilateral trade has a big prospect, and that has witnessed growth even during the pandemic period. Fine. And India's main export to Bangladesh are raw cotton, non-retail pure cotton yarn, electricity, because India export electricity, fine, to Bangladesh, okay, for its power needs, and its main import from the country are pure vegetable oil, not knit, men's suit and textile scraps. Fine. So because Bangladesh is a major apparel manufacturing hub in South Asia, okay, with the all major apparel manufacturers of the world having their factory in Bangladesh. So non-textile scraps are a major import from Bangladesh to India. Fine. What is the comprehensive economic partnership agreement objective from the two countries to be signed from the two countries? While informal talk on SEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, have been happening since 2018, officials said that the pandemic has brought urgency. Fine. Chinese investment in Bangladesh were an initial trigger for India, but India and Bangladesh want to set up the pace following the economic shock faced by the two economies. In the pandemic, both the countries faced economic shock, and the Chinese trade to Bangladesh was affected in on the eve of the pandemic. So, right now in the post-pandemic period, so both the countries have evinced interest to expand their bilateral trade. Okay, so to strengthen this, and which was initiated by the Chinese factor, is going to give fillip to India Bangladesh bilateral trade value. Okay. The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is likely to focus on trading goods, services, and investment. What is the things? So this will focus on trade in goods, services, and investment, with key objective being the reduction of the trade gap between the two countries, because so there is a big trade gap. So the trade is in favor of India. You can say that means India export more than it imports. So this is trade gap that leads to the trade gap. This need to be breached. Fine. As Bangladesh prepare to graduate into a developing nation by 2026, after which it may no longer qualify for the trade benefit that it currently enjoys as a least developed country. It is keen to clean the SEPA in a year, because by 2026 Bangladesh plans to be a developing nation. Right now it is an underdeveloped country. Fine. And the benefit that it enjoy, the tax relaxations, the benefits on international trade, which it enjoy being an underdeveloped country, may not again be available to Bangladesh after 2026, when its status will be upgraded to a developing country from the present underdeveloped economy. Fine. The SEPA has figured prominently during the last Commerce Secretary level meeting in New Delhi in March 2022. In March 2022, there is a Commerce Secretary level meeting between the two sides held in New Delhi, and the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement was discussed during that period between the two sides. Fine. The current institutional framework for trade and investment include, during the visit of Prime Minister to Bangladesh in June 2015, the bilateral trade agreement between the two countries was renewed for a period of 5 years with a provision for auto renewal. Fine. So when the Prime Minister visited to Bangladesh in 2015, okay, there is a bilateral trade agreement was signed with the two countries. Okay, and that is for a 5 year period, that is 15 to 20, and provision for auto renewal thereafter. Fine. That means we have already bilateral free trade agreement. Bilateral trade agreement, the two sides is already there. Fine. Okay. Under the provisions of the South Asian Free Trade Agreement, fine. Under the provisions of the South Asian Free Trade Area Agreement, SAFTA, signed by among the SARC countries. SAFTA is an agreement among the SARC member countries. Bangladesh extend preferential tariff to Indian exports of products outside the sensitive list of 993 items. In 2021, India announced duty-free, quota-free access to Bangladesh for all tariff lines except tobacco and alcohol. India allowed this. This is a gesture by India towards Bangladesh. An agreement on promotion and protection of investment has also been enforced in 2011. Joint interpretative notes to the agreement were signed during the visit of Indian Finance Minister to Bangladesh in October 2017. To facilitate trade and transit through inland waterways, a protocol on inland waterway trade and transit, okay, has been in place since 1972. Okay, this protocol on inland waterway trade and transit was renewed for a period of 5 years with a provision for auto renewal during Modi's visit to Bangladesh in 2015. Okay, the protocol allows the movement of goods by vessels on 8 routes between the points in Bangladesh and India, as well as between the points of India through Bangladesh. Fine. That means through the water routes. So they allow trade in goods. Okay. Direct sea movement of containerized bulk dry cargo began after the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding on coastal shipping in June 2015. This has reduced the shipping time between India and Bangladesh from 30-40 days to 7 to 10 days. Okay. And has the potential to emerge as an economical model of transportation for business community on both the sides. Fine. Directly they are able to access it. Fine. To the port developmental activity in Bangladesh. Fine. MOU were signed in 2015 on the use of Chittagong and Mongla ports for movement of goods to and from India. Fine. Which are in Bangladesh. The MOU on border hut. Border hut is a marketplace in the border. Okay. So this is a very unique concept launched between the two countries called the border hut market in the border. On the India-Bangladesh border, renewed in April 2017 during the visit of Prime Minister Hasina to India. Currently, 4 border huts, okay, were functional, two in each in Meghalaya and Tripura, okay, are functional. Work on setting up 2 more huts on the Tripura-Bangladesh border and a 4 on the Meghalaya-Bangladesh border is on the way. The two sides have also decided to identify locations for another 6 border huts. So through this border hut, both the countries' traders and even manufacturers, so they are allowed to sell their products to the other side in a more convenient manner, because these border hut provide them the scope to trade the items uninterrupted without any involvement of intermediary. The traders from both the sides, they can trade their items, okay, at the border hut or the border marketplaces, and they are being functional in India Bangladesh border. Okay, we have already 4 such functional border hut. Okay, so 2 each. Okay, so are functional at Tripura and Meghalaya. Fine, in the Indian side. So where the traders from both the sides, they interact and they sell their products to the directly to the other side without the involvement of any intermediary. So this provides a scope for expansion of trade between the two countries, okay, and directly among the traders from both the sides without any involvement of intermediaries. Fine. So to eliminate the intermediaries, this provision has been added. Okay. So which will facilitate wider trade interaction between the two neighboring countries. Fine. Okay. So this is the discussion on trade development between India and Bangladesh during the recent visit of the Bangladesh Prime Minister to India. Okay, India is very much optimistic that much more area of cooperation between the two sides will be explored, and both the sides will get immense benefit by this. Okay, because their cooperation will facilitate wider interaction in trade, and not only in trade but other domain, which will be beneficial to both the sides, okay, giving equal return. Okay, so by which the relationship between the two countries will be further strengthened, because in the present era trade has emerged as the most determining and decisive factor in bilateral relations, because every country want to expand its trade relation with the other country, because through trade, so they want to achieve prosperity. So trade relation, so when it is good, that is a facilitating point for other political relation between the countries. Right. This is the present provision between the two sides. In the next news, we'll take up regarding the recent referendum in Chile. Fine. So, the people of Chile resoundingly rejected a new constitution. Okay. Okay. New constitution, which was set to replace a charter imposed by General Augusto Pinot 41 years ago. Amid heavy turnout for the referendum, which was 61.9% of the voters rejected the draft document, President Gabriel Boric, who has lobbied hard for the new document, said the result made it evident that the Chilean people were not satisfied with the constitutional proposal that the convention want to bring for them, because referendum is where the public were given the option to express their view on a particular matter. Okay, so referendum is a method of direct election or direct democratic provision where that particular matter is put before the public and to know their view before any enactment or any legal provision is made for that issue. Okay, so because legal provision made for that issue will make it inconvenient. Okay, without or so in case there is referendum, so the acceptability of the legal provision will be more, because people have already through a direct participation on the law making, so people have given their view. It is not that through their representative the decision was taken, that the people are being directly uh, engaged or referred in the particular issue. Fine. What are the need for a new constitution? In 2019, over a million people took to the street of Chile for greater equality and more social protection. Okay, for the two issue for which the people come to the street. Okay, in 2019. Okay, so they came to the street and demonstrated for greater equality and more social protection like pension. Okay, according to World Bank, Chile has been among Latin America's fastest growing economy in the recent decade. However, more than 30% of the population is economically vulnerable and income equality remains high between the rich and the poor. In 2019, protesters sought reform to address this inequality, which was in part uh, spurred by the involvement of private sector social realm. That means the social security were managed by the private sectors, especially the pension were managed by the private sector entity, not by the government agencies. The protest culminated with the then right-wing president Sebastian Pinera approving a referendum on the constitution. In October 20, 78% of Chileans approved a proposal to draft a new constitution. Fine. That means so people agreed for a new constitution where these their freedom, equality, and that social protection measures will be taken into wider consideration. Okay, in the new constitutional provision. Fine. How was the new constitution drafted? In the national plebiscite held in 2020, the voter had to tackle two main points. Okay, what they had to tackle? They had to tackle
two major issues. What are the two major issues? Firstly, whether the constitution should be changed or not. Secondly, whether the new constitution would be prepared by the constitutional convention of member elected directly or a mix of constitutional convention and consisting of both the members of parliament and directly elected citizen in equal proportion. Okay, two things were discussed. First is, so whether there is a need to change the constitution. That's the number one. And number two is whether the new constitution would be prepared by a constitutional convention or constitutional assembly as we know it. Okay. And the composition of that constitutional convention, whether they will be directly elected to draft the constitutions or it will consist of the parliament members and directly elected representatives, a combination of both. Fine. The 155 member convention, okay, 79% of the voters suggested that a directly elected constitutional convention be entrusted with this duty. Okay. The second vote conducted in May 16, 15 and 16 were elected the members of the Constitutional Convention. That means, as the voter agreed that a directly elected Constitutional Convention should be created to draft the Constitution, so election was held for that, and 155 member Constitutional Convention, okay, was elected by the people to draft the new constitution for the country. Fine. And the 155 member convention reserved 17 seats exclusively for the indigenous people because Chile has a number of indigenous people. So 15 for 17 seats were reserved for the indigenous people, ensuring representation of the varied community constituting nearly 12.8% of the country's total population as per the 2017 census. Fine. So the indigenous peoples were well represented in the constitutional convention. Fine. Further, in order to ensure gender parity, it was mandated that neither gender can have more than 55%. This is very, very important. Okay, in maintaining gender equality. So, neither gender can have more than 55% representation in the convention. That means both male and female should be equally represented in the constitutional convention. That means none strength should be more than 55%. If it is 155 member, so 55% of this should not be from any of the group, male or female. That means, so that it should be between 50 to 55%. Fine. Okay. Also, independent member are to be in majority. The Constitutional Convention in charge of the process commenced work in July 2022. Okay, they start the work in July 2021. Okay, they start the work for drafting the Constitution. Okay, because the Constitutional that commission or convention are elected directly by the people to draft the new constitution for the country. Okay, what change did the proposed constitution entails? The main changes to the constitution involve reforms to the pension system. Very, very important. See, what are the changes made in the constitution by the constituent convention? Reforms in the pension system, mining grants, the nature of property ownership, as well as policy with respect to the environment. These are the major aspects to be dealt with. So, pension system, mining grants, nature of property ownership, and policy with respect to the environment. Chile's 1981 pension system mandated that all wage and salary workers pay a percentage of their gross earning into a pension fund administered by the varied private pension fund administrator. That means every salary earning person, okay, wage and salary worker who get a wage or a salary, so should contribute a part of their gross earning into a pension fund for social security during the old age.
and a number of private pension fund administrators. Okay, so it is the private pension fund administrators who has given the responsibility to manage this pension fund. In simple words, profit making national and foreign liability companies manage social security funding in Chile. That means the pension fund were managed by private entities, both domestic and foreign. Fine. The then Chilean government stated that the move was motivated by efficiency and fiscal concern. Right. Huh? 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 Would you, right? Huh? Hello? Would you like? Would you like? Hmm. Mamba, un poco pongo que es muy clase. Buda very बहुत बस्तर भी है प्रकार का क्लास और क्लास प्रकार का चुन जाए भी नहीं कौन पकड़ गई Okay, so then Chile government stated that the move was motivated by efficiency and fiscal concern, and a wish to reduce the role of government in economic affairs. So the government justified that why the private sector has been involved in pension management, this is only to reduce the role of government in the economic affairs. The earlier system based on the pay as you go mechanism had ensured that pensions were not subject to financial market fluctuations. Further, the incumbent finance minister of Chile, Mario Markel, has pointed out recently that the 1981 system allowed for a lower level of contributions from workers and companies compared to other countries. Fine. The President Boric has proposed replacing the private sector health system with a public one to ensure more security. Among the biggest demand during the 2019 protest, Reuters quoting Mr. Merkel reported in March 2022 that the government would send the long-awaited reforms bill to Congress in 2023. Fine. So that is what is to be done. Okay, and to reform as per the new constitutional reform proposal put in the new constitution. Fine. According to the rating agency Fitch, the global rating agency, the existing pension system assets are equal to above 60% of the Chilean GDP. Changes to the Chilean pension system would affect the ability of the Chilean corporates to raise financing in the local market. The existing system encourages national savings and is the primary source of local financing for long-term investment projects used by many companies in the country. Fine. President Boric has also been a proponent of increasing mining taxes and royalties. During his campaign, he has also proposed setting up a national lithium company, because lithium battery are right now more in demand, and Chile is world's second largest producer of lithium after Australia. Fine, and it has a big market and future market for this lithium. Okay, recent amendment have stipulated that the state has an absolute, exclusive, inalienable, and imprescriptible domain on all mines. Exploiting natural resources such as coal and copper, among others, has helped Chile prosper but foster sizable social inequality. The text of the amendment permitted certain mining concessions only if they serve the public good as determined by the judiciary. Fitch stated that a change in direction could hinder investment in the sector, especially large long-term investment. Potential concern include the increased role of indigenous people in the new project approvals, changes in the property and water rights, and unclear terms of compensation if an asset X expropriated. Fine. So this is the major issue. So investment in the sector that put into the sector. Then long-term investment potential considering the increased role of indigenous people, the new project approval, change in the property and water rights, and under terms of the compensation if an asset is expropriated. So these are the issues raised by the uh, people at present. Okay, the new Chilean constitution was to also grant freedom to own all property and goods except those which nature has made common to all. Okay, which see the provisions. Chile constitution has to grant freedom to own all property and goods except those which nature has made common to all. The goods which nature has made for all, so they are not be brought under the control, or which should be collectively owned by the country, should not be controlled by a section or by the means business community or by the specific agencies. Okay, a qualified quorum law would establish requirements for the acquisition of property to better serve the interest of the nation, including consideration about national security, public health utility, and preservation of the environment. Okay, it recognizes that the environment could be preserved and it is the right of the community to live in an environment free of contamination. Fine. So this is the provisions made in the new constitution. Fine. So it recognizes that the environment must be preserved. It is the right of the community to live in an environment free of contamination. The Australian Constitution of 1981 Water Code in the Constitution let the government grant free water rights to private entities. This ended up creating a market for water with the state unable to supply enough for domestic consumption and people have to purchase. Okay. Bloomberg report in February 22 that proposal to annual free water rights for private concern was approved in an initial vote by the Constitutional Convention Environmental Committee. This effectively meant that mines, agribusiness and utility would have to seek temporary permit to use water. Okay, and have to pay for that. Additionally, the revised mechanism would prioritize human consumption, stability of water reserves, and indigenous rights. Fine. So these are all the provisions in the new constitution. Okay. Okay, so this is what the issue regarding the people's demand in Chile for change to a new constitution. Why is the need for the change and what are the points that are being opposed in the constitution? Okay, in the old constitution. Then next come so the idea of climate reparation or payment or climate reparation or climate compensation. Okay, facing the worst flooding disaster in its history, Pakistan has begun demanding reparation, that means damage payment or compensation from the rich country that are mainly responsible for causing climate change. In repeated public statements, Pakistan's Minister for Climate Change, Sherry Rahman, has been saying that while her country makes negligible contribution to global warming, it has been among the most vulnerable to climate change. The current floods have already claimed over 1,300 lives and caused economic damage of billions of dollars to Pakistan. Okay, and rich nations, Rahman has argued, owe reparations to country like Pakistan for the consequences of the climate change. So the rich country who are the major responsibility for this climate change through their human induced factor. So they should pay for the damage compensation or compensate the countries who are becoming the victim of climate change and who are poor and who are unable to protect their people and property due to the climate change as an impact of the human induced factor which are caused by the developed countries more than the developing countries. Fine. So, on the face of it, Pakistan's demand for reparation appears to be a long suit, but the principles being involved are fairly well established in environmental jurisprudence. In fact, Pakistan is not alone in making this demand. Almost the entire developing world, particularly the small island states, has for years been insisting on setting up an international mechanism for financial compensation for loss and damage caused by climate disasters. The issue has come up repeatedly at international climate change negotiations and on other platforms. So, to compensate the countries, especially the poor countries who are facing the threat and incurring losses of life and property due to climate change. The historical emission argument. The demand for compensation for loss and damage from climate disasters is an extension of the universally acknowledged polluters pay principle. Okay, those who have polluted, they should compensate because the victims uh, are not responsible for the pollution, but someone else is responsible, and for someone else's fault, some other persons are suffering. That makes the polluter liable for payment, not just for the cost of the remedial action, but also for compensating the victims of environmental damage caused by their action. In the climate change framework, the burden of responsibility falls on those rich countries that have contributed most of the greenhouse gas emissions since 1850, generally considered to be the beginning of the industrial age. Who are the country? They are the developed countries. Okay, so the rich country or the developed countries. Okay, because they have done the maximum damage to the environment. United States and the European Union, including UK, account for over 50% of all the emission. Okay, during this particular period. So who are the countries? So European Union consisting of presently 27 countries. Then with UK, it was plus UK. Okay, then USA. So they are responsible for more than 50% of the emission during this period. Russia, Canada, Japan, and Australia, who are included, the combined contribution goes past to 65% or almost two-thirds of all the emissions. Okay, whereby limited number of country in the world. Historical responsibility is important because carbon dioxide remain in the atmosphere for hundreds of years, and it is the cumulative accumulation of this carbon dioxide that causes global warming. A country like India, currently the third largest emitter, accounts for only 3% of the historical emission. China, which is the world's biggest emitter for over 15 years now, has contributed about 11% to the total emissions since 1850. Right. So China is the biggest emitter now. Okay. But it since 1850, if the calculation is be done, so it has contributed hardly 11%, and India has contributed only 3%. This is India and this is China. Right. That means the contribution of India and China are very less as compared to the developed world, who are contributing to emission of pollution since 1850. While the impact of climate change is global, it is much more severe on the poorer nations because their geographical locations and weaker capacity to cope. They are geographically location in disadvantaged locations, and they are not in a position to cope with it. This is what is giving rise to demand for loss and damage compensation. Countries that have had negligible contributions to historical emissions and have severe limitations of resources are the one that face the most devastating impacts of climate change. Okay, so who face it? Country who have had negligible contribution to historical emission. Okay, like the uh, poor country in Africa, in Latin America. Okay, so, and have several severe limitations of resources because they are poor and face most devastating impact of climate change, because the impact of climate change is more on the poor countries of the world. Fine. Then the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, the 1994 international agreement that lays down the broad principle of the global efforts to fight climate change, explicitly acknowledge this differentiated responsibility of nations. It makes it very clear that rich countries must provide both the finance and the technology to the developing nations to help them tackle climate change. It is this mandate that later evolved into the 100 billion amount that the rich country agreed to provide every year to the developed country in the form of what is known as Green Climate Fund. Green Climate Fund, where the developed country are supposed to pay $100 billion per annum. Who will pay? The rich will pay. To whom they will pay? So it will be spent for the poor countries. Okay, but no one complied to this. Okay, while this promise is yet to be met, this 100 billion per year amount is not meant for loss and damage. Climate disaster were not a regular occurrence in 1994, and as such, the UNFCCC does not make a mention of loss and damage. So they want that this amount is spent for climate resilient, creating or compensating the loss due to climate change. Okay, this particular demand emerged much later and faced up resistance from the developed countries, and they told that why shall we pay to the countries so who are uh, leading polluters at present, like India and China. Okay, so because India and China have emerged as big polluters in the present situation. Okay, so the developed countries who are supposed to pay this $100 billion per annum the Green Climate Fund contribution. So they are opposing that why shall we pay, okay, for the damage that was caused where we are not much which are right now being done by some of these countries, okay, so who are doing much pollution at present, and they have cited an example of India and China. Right, why the amount being paid by us will be given to the country who are the present polluters. Right, that is the point of objection. Okay, it was after much struggle that the developing countries and the NGO managed to establish a separate channel on loss and damage at international climate change negotiations. The Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, set up in 2013, are the first formal acknowledgement of the need to compensate developing countries struck by climate disasters. However, the progress on this front has been painfully slow. The discussion under the this Warsaw International Mechanism so far have focused mainly on enhancing knowledge and strengthening dialogue. No funding mechanism or even a promise to provide funds has come about. At 2021 climate conference in Glasgow, a 3-week task force was set up to discuss a funding arrangement. Fine. Okay. It is not hard to understand why the developed countries are dead against compensation claim. They are struggling to put together even the 100 billion per year flow that they had reluctantly agreed to provide. Although the developed country have agreed to provide this $100 billion to the Green Climate Fund mechanism under UNFCCC, what they are supposed to provide $100 billion per annum to the Green Climate Fund. Okay, under UNFCCC. But so they are not the developed countries. Nations are reluctant. Okay, although they agreed initially. Further, loss and damage claims can easily spiral into billions of dollars or even more, according to a recent report by the UN Office for the Cooperation of Humanitarian Efforts, okay, prepared by the UN General Assembly. Annual funding requests related to climate-linked disaster average 15.5 billion in the 3 years period between 2019 to 2021. The economic loss from Cyclone Amphan in India and Bangladesh in 2020 had been assessed at $15 billion. Okay, the report said that the United States alone is estimated to have inflicted more than 1.9 trillion in damage to other countries due to its emission. Then there are non-economic losses as well, including loss of lives, displacement and migration, health impact, and damage to cultural heritage. The report cited the result of another study to say that the unavoidable annual economic losses from climate change are projected to reach somewhere between 290 billion to 580 billion by the year 2030. See the magnitude that this is the loss due to climate change between 290 billion to 580 billion by 230. Estimating the quantum plus, not every loss and damage can be put up for compensation claims. There are practical difficulties in estimating how much a country has actually suffered due to the action of others. Fine. So it is not exactly possible to quantify the loss, but average estimation has put this big amount as losses due to climate change. Fine. To begin with, it has to be established that the disaster was caused by climate change. Good progress has been made in attribution science for the last few years, which now enables scientists to say with a fair degree of certainty how much role climate change has had to play in a particular extreme weather events, but it is still far from being an exact science. Okay, although estimations are right now being made that what is the loss due to climate change, but pinpointing the losses accurately has not yet been possible. Then there is this other step about asserting how much of the losses are due to event itself and what could be attributed. Okay, to misgovernance. Okay, there is steps about asserting how much of the losses are due to event itself and what could be attributed to misgovernance. For example, the kind of flooding currently being witnessed in Bangalore could, to say very large extent, be attributed to the lack of efficient urban planning, even though a heavy downpour could be the result of climate change. Okay, a lot of background work is going on to create the framework in which it could be possible to quantify the compensation due to an affected country. What Pakistan has done, though its demand for reparation is to call attention to this often neglected aspect, and the world prepares for this year's climate conference scheduled to be held at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt in November. Pakistan has already received widespread support from global climate NGO that are likely to press for allocating or allotting more time for this subject at the Egypt conference, because the upcoming conference on climate conference to be held at in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt in this year in November 2022. So many global climate NGOs have supported the claim made by Pakistan, and definitely they will be demanding more time for discussion on this particular topic at the Egypt climate conference, because Pakistan has raised this issue at an appropriate time where they all need to be given support, because today it is fine. And the next topic, okay, so it's very unique one. The nasal vaccine on pandemic get emergency use not. Okay, Bharat Biotech, the indigenous vaccine manufacturer in India. Okay, that's the Bharat Biotech's COVID-19 recombinant nasal vaccine has been approved by the Ministry of Health Central Drug Standards Control Organization for primary immunization of those aged 18 years and above in emergency situation. Okay, so till date, so the vaccines that were taking against corona are injectable vaccines, but Bharat Biotech has developed a new version called the nasal vaccines. Okay, for corona. Okay, what is the nasal vaccine? Vaccines are usually given through different routes, with the most common being injectable shoots delivered into the muscles or intramuscular, or the tissue just between the skin and the muscles. Okay, there are also other routes of delivery, especially in some vaccines for infant, that includes administering liquid solution orally, like that we give the oral polio drops (OPV). Okay, oral polio vaccine that we are giving for eradicating polio from India instead of injecting. In the intranasal route, the vaccine is sprayed to the nostril. How it is done? It is sprayed to the nostril and inhaled. Okay, Many viruses, including the coronavirus, enter the body through the mucosa, wet, squishy tissue that lines the nose, mouth, lungs, and the digestive tract, triggering a unique immune response from cells and molecules there. Experts believe an intranasal vaccine can act against the virus from the time it tries to break the body's immunity barrier. This is how the justification for the nasal vaccines. Fine. Instead, intramuscular vaccines generally fail to eliciting this mucosal response as they rely on immune cell mobilized from elsewhere in the body flocking to the site of the infection. How the nasal vaccine work? In the case of both delivery routes, vaccine trigger a response in the blood. B cells, for example, could churn out antibodies, including a particularly protein disease fighter called the IgG, to roam the body in the search of virus. Other cells called the T cells would either help the B cells produce antibodies or seek out and destroy the infected cells. But vaccines that are injected through the nose or the mouth also tap into another set of immune cells that hangs around the mucosal tissues. The B cell that resides there can make another type of antibody called the IgA that play a key role in destroying the airway pathogens. In addition, the T cells that are residing nearby will be able to memorize the pathogens that it encountered and will lifelong scout the area where these are first encountered. Means they'll act as a protector, as a sentry in the gate to not to allow that particular virus which has been identified for that particular vaccine. Okay. Importance. Okay, so importance of vaccine delivered to the nasal or oral routes. These vaccines aim to overcome potential difficulties with mass vaccinations and reduce the cost by doing away with the need for needles and syringe. Because if the vaccines to be administered orally or through the nostril or the nasal route, so the method of injection is ruled out. That means the vaccine is not to be injected, and for that the need of injectable syringe is no more required. Okay, and some other benefits also there. Instead of vaccine are also intranasal vaccines are also expected to cut down the dependence on various trained personnel to administer the vaccine according to the experts. Because normally if the vaccine is to be injected, so trained personnel are to be deployed to inject the give the injection or the vaccine in the form of injection. Okay, that needs training personnel. But intranasal vaccines are also expected to cut down the dependence on various trained personnel. One attraction with the intranasal vaccine is that very simple to use, and sometimes that can be self-administered. In pandemic and outbreaks, people can use them on their own, just spray in the nostril or in the mouth. Okay, experts believe that a nasal vaccine has the likelihood of lower safety events as it is going into the mucosal surface. It will likely be restricted. However, according to expert, there is very little evidence to back the effectiveness of this route of delivery so far. And same from some flu vaccines, attempt to deliver vaccines like this have not been successful in the previous instances. Fine, but this is a unique development to fight against the pandemic because people will be able to administer it on their own without dependence on the trained manpower. Fine. So, uh, okay, the next news is related to Raman Magsaysay Award. Recently, the Communist Party of India, Marxist, has restrained the former Kerala Health Minister K. Saleja from receiving the Raman Magsaysay Award, called as the Asian version of the Nobel Prize. Fine. So, and she has denied or rejected, expressed her rejection
of receiving the Raman Magsaysay Award. Fine. Something to know about the Raman Magsaysay Award, otherwise known as the Asian version of the Nobel Prize. Born in 1907, Raman Magsaysay served as the seventh president of Philippines from December 1953 to March 1957 before he was killed in a plane crash on Mount Manugal in Cebu Island of Philippines. During the World War II, he served as a guerrilla leader against the Japanese as part of the 31st Infantry Division of the Philippines. The US took note of his military leadership during the war and appointed him as the military governor of his home province after the Philippines attained independence in 1946. Okay, Raman Magsaysay started his political journey with his election to the House of Representatives in 1946. Okay, he came into prominence with his appointment as the Secretary National Defense deal with the communist-led Hooks movement. Fine. In 1953, so Raman Magsaysay became president of the Philippines. As president, Magsaysay led several agrarian, military, and administrative reforms. His three-year tenure is often cited as the golden years of Philippines. Okay, and in his memory, so following his death, the president Raman Magsaysay in 1957, the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation established the Raman Magsaysay Award in the president's honor in agreement with the Philippines government. Fine. So it is in the prize was initially issued by the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation. Okay, in agreement with the Philippines government. Later, the fund set up the Raman Magsaysay Award Foundation, a non-profit organization to manage Asia's biggest honor that recognizes selfless work transforming life. But it is given Raman Magsaysay Award is given to individual for selfless work which has led to transformation of lives of people. Regarded as Asia's version of the Nobel Prize, this award is initially given for contribution to government services, domain public services, community leadership, journalism, literature, and creative communication arts, and peace and international understanding. And the new category called emergent leadership was added subsequently. So, in how many domains it is given? So, it is given in government services, in public services, in community leadership, in journalism, in literature and creative communication, okay, creative communication and arts, and peace and international understanding, to which emergent leadership category was added subsequently. From India, 58 persons have backed this international honor. Some of the past awardee includes Mother Teresa, Satyajit Ray, Varghese Kurian, okay, Arvind Kejriwal, the President Srim of Delhi, Mahesh Sutta, the big famous writer, Aruna Roy, okay. So they have all received this award. But because Raman Magsaysay ousted the communist government in the country. So the Communist Party of India, Marxist, restrained its cadre, the former minister of the state, okay, of Kerala, okay, to receive this award, okay. The former Kerala Health Minister K.K. Sareja, who has been declared as an awardee by the Raman Magsaysay Foundation, because Raman Magsaysay was involved in ousting the communist government there in his own country during his tenure. So the Communist Party of India, Marxist, restrained her from uh, accepting this award. Fine. Okay. Then, then the next news is on India. UK conducts counter ransomware exercise for 26 nations. But the ransomware, it is a spyware or a computer virus by which programming by which some data from the computer is hacked and a ransom is demanded to release it back. Otherwise, so they are corrupted. Fine. India's National Security Council Secretariat and the UK government, in collaboration with the BAE system, successfully designed and conducted the cyber security exercise for 26 countries as part of the International Counter Ransomware Initiative in Resilience Working Group, which is being led by India under the leadership of National Cyber Security Coordinators. Okay, The exercise has been facilitated by the BAE systems via the immersive labs platform, and the scenario has been written specifically for the participant based on threat intelligence and operational experiences. The theme of the exercise is based on energy sector, in which the respective national cyber crisis management team of the CRI partners nations will have to deal with a ransomware attack on multiple electricity distribution companies. These companies are responsible for distribution of electricity to domestic customers and are the last link to the public supply. The exercise explored the complexity of decision making around response to ransomware on critical national infrastructure. Fine. So in this case, so hackers hack the computer, take out the data, and they demand a ransom, and how to protect it in future. Okay. So in the recent past, we have seen WannaCry ransomware that affected many systems in India. It is called the WannaCry ransomware. Okay, it affected hospitals or the service delivery companies and demanded ransom for them for releasing back their data which has been hijacked. Fine. So this is what we have conducted this exercise in cooperation with UK for 26 countries. Fine. Okay, there are over 26 invited from the CRI partner nations and their respective organizations, including cybersecurity, national crisis management, national security policy, critical national infrastructure, and law enforcement agencies. The aim to organize this virtual cyber exercise on ransomware resilience is to stimulate a large, widespread cybersecurity incident affecting organizations within a country. This exercise has been designed to support the mission of the CRI and aims to allow participating CRI members to test their capability to respond to a major ransomware incident, demonstrate the benefit of sharing information and collaborating during a major incident, provide opportunity for the CRI nations to share these approaches to countering ransomware. Fine. So this is an initiative to prevent future attack of ransomware, where the computer is affected and a ransom is demanded to restore it back. Okay. Then the third topic in this issue that we have discussed: Women in Engineering, Science and Technology West, launching of a new iSTEAM initiative. Okay. Women in Engineering, Science and Technology West and iSTEAM, Indian Science, Technology and Engineering Facilities Map initiative called the Women in Engineering, Science and Technology West, as launched by Government of India. Fine. So what is its aim? The West program will cater to women with a STEM background and empower them to contribute to the science, technology and innovation ecosystem. iSTEM is a national web portal. Remember this. What this is? So iSTEM is a national web portal for sharing research equipments, facilities, and is the umbrella under which many programs for promoting collaboration in R&D and technological innovation among and between academia and industry, especially startups, are underway. Through the West Initiative, iSTEM shall provide separate platform to scientifically inclined women researchers, scientists, and technologists for pursuing research in basic or applied sciences in frontier areas of science and engineering. Women may join as West program and explore opportunity to become stakeholders in various domains and pursue career in R&D at various levels. Technicians, technologists, scientists, and entrepreneurs. Opportunities range from operating scientific equipments and maintaining them to designing and manufacturing them. Okay. The skill development program under the West Initiative will provide training for women in science and technology background to brush up their abilities and become engaged in the field as lab technician and maintenance engineers, filling crucial gap in the R&D infrastructure of the country. This initiative will also help bring women back into science and technology domain after a career break. Fine. With this experience, women can become entrepreneurs to serve as consultant for the operation and maintenance of sophisticated equipment instruments through the iSTEM platform. This should go a long way towards filling a skill gap and putting publicly funded equipment to good use. Under the West initiative, the current support being provided to science and technology startup by women entrepreneurs by iSTEM will be enhanced. The access of R&D facility and the R&D software platform, console, MATLAB, LabVIEW, AutoCAD, available through the iSTEM portal will form a strong support network for women entrepreneurs in science and technology. A digital consortium connect quickly for online discussion and immediate support has also been established through iSTEM WhatsApp and Telegram platforms. A dedicated team of women will ensure the successful implementation of the West initiative. This is a very proactive initiative done by the government for the women to contribute their role in science and technology domain. Okay, and to uh, enrich the science and technology domain through their unique contribution, accessing and sharing the facility created at the national scientific level. Fine. Wait, wait, I know the project. Okay, so in today's question discussion, we'll discuss the gender greater representation of women in higher judiciary to ensure diversity and equity and inclusiveness. In the recent instances concerning women in judiciary, the Chief Justice of India, N.V. Ramanna, called for 50% representation of women in judiciary.
According to latest data on the gender gap in judiciary, it highlighted that the Supreme Court only has two women judges, and there has never been a female Chief Justice of India. Okay, so there is only around 80 women judges of the total sanctioned strength of 1100 judges in higher judiciary functioning at the country at present. 1100, so only 80 out of 1100 are women judges. Fine. The Sustainable Development Goal number 5 and SDG 16 in particular address the global responsibility of having gender equality and women's representation in public institutions such as the judiciary. Achieving equality for women judges in terms of representation at all levels of the judiciary should be the ultimate goal. Fine. Being a woman does not limit her critical thinking and capability to render justice. Judicial benches having representation of women give either a new dimension or broader acceptance to legal principle and interpretation. So, this is a very deplorable condition that after 75 years of independence, so in judiciary, the representation of women is very less. Okay, and at present, there are only two women judges in Supreme Court, and the number is still less out of the 1100 sanctioned strength in higher judiciary, like high courts. Only 80 women judges are there all over the country. Fine. By their mere presence, women judge enhance the legitimacy of the court, sending a powerful signal that they are open and accessible to those who seek recourse to justice. The legal profession, as a gatekeeper of equality and as an institution committed to the preservation of rights, should be emblematic of gender equality. Improving the representation of women in the judiciary is of crucial importance and has to go a long way towards a more balanced and emphatic approach in cases involved in sexual violence. Changing the long established demographics of a court can make the institution more amenable to consider itself in a new light and potentially lead to further modernization and reform. Fine. This is what being highlighted in the uh, address given by the retired Chief Justice N.V. Ramanna. He wanted that at least women should be given more chances in the judiciary. Then let see what are the MCQs prepared for discussion today as part of our current affairs session. Okay, so coming to question number one. Okay, so border hut with reference to India and Bangladesh, consider the following. The border huts are set up at the zero line of international border with one part on Indian side, okay, and other part side in Bangladesh. No local taxes would be imposed on the item to be sold in the hut, and currency of both the country would prevail or will be accepted. So both the statements are correct because to promote trade, so India and Bangladesh have established a number of border hut, okay, or that in the border markets for the people and the traders to trade with their goods. Fine, and this has become very popular in promoting trade between the two sides. So answer is C. Then consider the following statement with reference to South Asian Free Trade Area or SAFTA. All the SARC member are the part of SAFTA. Yes, SARC is for SAFTA, and SAFTA is the trade agreement among the 8 SARC nations. Among the 8 SARC nations. So India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Afghanistan. Members of, so they are all the 8 members, and SAFTA is the trade forum, the trade agreement among SARC members. Fine. Then, so see the right answer. Fine. For this. Because the following countries: Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Peru. Okay. So which of the country border with Chile? So only 1, 4, and 5. Argentina border, Bolivia border, and Peru border. Okay. These three countries share border with Chile. Fine. Then consider the following statement: polluter pay principle was first conceptualized by OECD, Organized for Economic Cooperation and Development. Fine. OECD stands for, okay, this OECD stands for Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. In India, the polluter pay principle was for the first time applied and defined in 1996 case of Indian Council of Environmental Legal Action versus Innova India. So both are correct. So answer is C. Fine. Then 5. Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage often mentioned in news can be asked to the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, where damage assessment for climate change is to be made and responsibility fixed on member countries. Fine. Then question number, next question. Consider the following statement with respect to iSTEM portal. The portal aims to encourage women in science and technology domain, preferably those having a break in career and not having regular employment, to explore possibility of re-entry into profession. Fine. So this is incorrect. Fine. It is a web portal only. Okay. So aims to give a scope for sharing the facility available for doing research. It is initiative of the Department of Science and Technology under the Prime Minister's Science and Technology Innovation Advisory Council. This is also incorrect, so both are incorrect. Fine. Recently, West Initiative is for women. Okay. India and which country counter ransomware exercise? UK along with 26 other countries. India, UK, and 26 other countries. Fine. Then coming to question number 9. Which of the following statement regarding cheetah is correct? Okay, it is fastest terrestrial animal, run faster. IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, red list status of Asian cheetah is endangered. Okay, it is not endangered, it is vulnerable. IUCN red list status of African cheetah is also vulnerable. Okay, so this is vulnerable. So 2 is incorrect, 1 and 3 are right. Okay, then coming to 10, the following statement about Central Drug Standard Control Organization. It is under the Department of Health Research and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, right? Okay. It derives its power from the Drug and Cosmetic Acts. Fine. It is responsible for approval of license to vaccine. So this is the major function of this agency. Okay. So it gives license to vaccine. So 3, all these are right. A dark sky region is majorly related to, okay, light pollution and astronomy. Okay, so this will know the, we should, through this dark sky region, so assessment will be made on that light pollution and on astronomical things. So this is being built in India right now. Okay, the Raman Magsaysay Award is given in Philippines in memory of its ex-president. Okay, Raman Magsaysay. It is known as the Asian version of the Nobel Prize. Okay, Kushiara River, okay, recently news flow through the, which of the following country? Bangladesh and India. Okay, hundreds of river flowed in the two countries. Okay, Prague recently seen in news located in Czech Republic. Okay, the capital of Czech Republic. Thousands of people attended the Coimbatore Central region to pay homage to freedom fighter V.O. Chidambaram on his 151st death anniversary, which is the following associations of institutions associated with the V.O. Chidambaram. So all of these, Swadeshi Prachar Sabha, National Kuda, Madras Agro-Industrial Society, Desabhiman Sangam, so all are associated with uh, V.O. Chidambaram. Right. Then coming to 16, with reference to present context of India and Germany relation, consider the following statement. Germany is India's fourth largest, and the sixth largest, not fourth largest. Both in are members of G4. G4 concept India, uh, G4, which is demanding for the UN reforms, consist of, so Japan, India, Germany, and um, Brazil. Fine. So this is the G4. Okay. So both. So this is the sixth largest. Fine. Then then 70. The following statement: Iran, Congo, Iran, UAE, Venezuela. So a country are not founding member of OPEC. OPEC stands for Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries. So 2 and 4, Congo and UAE. So are not founding members of OPEC, which acts as a cartel for oil. Okay, SIDS Lighthouse Initiative frequently mentioned in news related to UN climate summits. Fine. With reference to recently released status report on India's external debt 2021-22, external debt refers to money borrowed from outside the country, okay, and has to be paid back in the currency in which it is to be borrowed. This is right. US dollar denominated debts remain the largest component of India's external debt. This is also correct. So which of the above statements are incorrect? So both are correct. So neither 1 and 2 be the answer. And coming to 20, BPAL is a drug regimen that is used to treat people with highly drug resistant form of tuberculosis. Fine. So, students, this way we complete our today's discussion of the topics, the long questions answer, and the MCQs. Keep on watching regularly to update yourself on the developments and also get acquainted with the question answer writing and the MCQ pattern of evaluating your preparation. Thank you.